Well, thanks for hopping on, man. I'm really, really, excuse me. I'm really excited to speak to you, man. Like, I think I love following people where I can just tell their life, what
Hmm.
they consistently can teach is a something they just have like a hunger for, and I can tell like whatever happened with John in his past, whatever he has going on now, and the thing that he researches, you can tell it's something that you really love.
Yep.
And I appreciate you for the work that you do because I think it's needed, even for me as a parent. And I even think it's fascinating, like thinking about you as a pastor, and also like you're into like the neuroscience too, and that's always just so fascinating for me because like when you hear like religion and then you hear science, it's like they're almost like on the complete opposite sides of each other. But
Well,
when
they
I
didn't
think about
used to be. Yeah, they didn't used to
really,
be that. Yeah. Well, throughout history, like the church was always pushing scientific advancement. And all of this, so like 300 years ago, even 100 years ago,
mm,
the smartest person at your high school became a pastor. Like that, like
really,
that. Yeah, yeah, like that's what it was. And because it was the highest level of education that you could receive is through seminaries. And then it was out of the seminaries that they branched out and they began to do like additional, and certain orders within the Catholic Church were more academic or more like focused on other things. So the Franciscans were the ones who were like really focused on social justice and like abolition and things like that. But then the Benedictines, they were all academics. Like the Dominicans were all academics. So like these people were the people who were like pushing science forward. The problem is, as they did so, science would then contradict the Bible, and then they would have this huge conflict of like, what do we do, because we just funded the research that disproved our holy book.
mm-hmm.
And that's where they ran into lots of problems, and they ran afoul of the Catholic Church. And it was, but it was always like the most educated people were always the pastors, and because it was the hardest discipline. Like you had to know ancient languages, you had to know, first of all, you had to know how to read, which was not
Yeah,
like, everybody didn't know how to read. So you had to know how to read, but you didn't just have to know how to read. Pastors today are really uneducated by and large. Pastors 100 years ago, all of them could read Greek, all of them could read
when
Hebrew.
you say uneducated, are you saying uneducated in other things outside of the Bible?
I think if you want like my actual take on this, pastors have never been less educated on the Bible than they are today.
Really?
So yeah, so the majority, I think it's over 50% of pastors have not gone to seminary now. That is unthinkable 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Every pastor went to seminary.
Mm,
Every pastor had a master's degree. Most pastors, like the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, had a doctorate in ministry, right?
mm-hmm.
So like that, like the idea that the problem is a lot of the ignorant and hateful stuff that comes out of the church is by people who have not done actually no study whatsoever on the Bible
Mm,
critically.
mm,
And even like, so I come from a tradition of Swedish immigrants. Like we're talking, the average Swedish immigrant that was part of my tradition was reading Greek. So like they were speaking Swedish at home, they were speaking English in the United States, and then in their spare time they were learning biblical Greek and Hebrew, which by the way is
mm,
really hard. So
mm,
like that, and that was just like random people. Those weren't even the people who like elevated and rose to the top and then got to preach. Like this was just like the average people were reading Greek and Hebrew. And actually, we have examples of this across, all sorts of different, like the AME church. You have tons of people reading Greek and Hebrew. Like so really it's this idea that like religion and science have to be separated. Like this is like an invention of the last 150 years. Like that was never the case until 150 years ago. And then
wow.
150 years ago, we just decided that like if you want the actual history on it, the people who wanted to maintain slavery, those people saw that the people who didn't want to maintain slavery were using the Bible to basically abolish slavery. They were seeing the Bible and they were going, "Hey, look, the Bible is very clear. Um, there's a call here for abolition. We should abolish slavery." And the people who wanted to keep slavery said, "Actually, you're studying the Bible too much. We need to study the Bible less so that we can maintain our economic system." And that is when all of it happened. So like literally the case to maintain slavery in the antebellum South was like the fall of Christian scholarship, because they could know. And my great grandfather was one of the first abolitionists. He's founded a college. He was one of the founders of the Republican Party back when it was the Republican Party of Lincoln.
Mhm.
And he was a pastor too, and an academic. He was a scholar and an academic. Um, but also had a master's of divinity and a doctorate in ministry. And he was like, yeah, like, we obviously, the Christians are the ones who are on the side of the Union Army here, and they're the ones that are on the side of abolishing slavery. And he like debated people openly who were like, no, you know what? And this is where a lot of like the earth is only 6,000 years old, and like the stuff that, the hardcore right
Mhm.
wing Christians will be, oh, the Bible says the earth is only 6,000 years old. Nobody, literally nobody believed that until 200 years ago. There was not a single person who believed that until 200 years ago. And they layered that on top so that they could justify certain atrocities that they were committing. Because if the earth was only 6,000 years old, then you get to reinterpret some things. You get to say that, for example, uh, people with darker skin are not the children of Adam. So
Mhm.
now all of a sudden they're not made in the image of God. You can see how all of this like branches out, and we think about it today as like, oh, this is all about evolution, or this is all about creationism, or this is all about this or that. No,
Mhm.
it was all in the service of trying to maintain like slavery and things in those nature, and that's just what it was.
Mhm. Man, you're like blowing my mind right now. So like the past like a couple years, I've been kind of going through like kind of a journey of understanding the Bible and like my faith. Because when I got really hit was when George Floyd was killed, and
Mm,
like that really hit me. I live in Minneapolis.
okay,
I'm from LA, but I live here. Went to college here. Met my wife. Three
you're a
kids.
You're a
Here.
Vikings player,
I was for a little bit. Yeah, I was for a
which
little bit.
which I was going to talk to you about today,
Okay. All right.
because
We can get into that. Are you a
because
Vikings fan?
I
You're a
think we
Bears
had a
fan?
game yesterday, didn't we?
I mean, I'm not a Vikings fan. like, you can talk trash all you want. I'm not a Vikings fan. I just played for them for a little bit. Um, but I've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and I just had a conversation with somebody on Sunday about like science versus the Bible and all these things, and how like you can't really, for me, like I can't really have a strong faith unless I'm asking hard questions.
Yes.
And a lot of those questions come from like the science-based thing, or like,
Hmm.
well, not science for me. It's more like psychology. It's
Yep.
like, and I think it's like a lot of stuff that you talk about, like the neuroscience of how the brain
Yep.
actually works. So
Yep.
it's like there's
Yep.
no way that I can like have a strong faith without understanding this stuff, but that brings me closer to God. And then when
Hmm.
you say that out loud in this day, just like John 4:16 says this, I'm like, bro, I can go read that myself. What do you actually think? You know what I'm saying? What do you actually think about this stuff that you're taught from your parents and pastors that you listen to? What do you actually think about it? You know what I'm saying?
But
And
you're
that's
taught
why,
not to
uh,
think. You have to
yeah.
understand that you're taught
Mhm.
not to think. So the things that I learned in seminary that contradict the kind of standard teachings of the Bible, like the evangelical church, like they would teach us this stuff, and then they would say, and by the way, never tell anybody about this. Like they would just tell you openly, and then they would say, but if you ever say this from the pulpit, like you're cooked. And most of my most of the people who I went to seminary with either deconstructed, they just said, oh, well, I'm not going to do this then, I'm not going to become a pastor. Maybe
Mhm.
they became like a social advocate, maybe they went into academia or something like that. Most of them didn't become pastors, right? Like I was one of the few that did. And when I did, I said, and I'm never going to hide anything from the people who I serve. I'm just
Mhm.
going to tell them openly.
Mhm.
And I lose
Mhm.
50% of the people who come to my church over stuff like that, where I just
Mhm.
say, yeah, so this is what the Bible says. And here's what scholars think about that. And they'll say, no, scholars don't think that. And I'll say, okay, you should go look that up. And then they come back and they're like, we can't attend this church anymore because I'm right. Scholars do say that, but
Mhm.
they can't. And it's all of that neuroscience. And I think that there's lots of ways to take the Bible and to every generation since the Bible was written has taken the Bible and applied it to their time and somewhat manipulated it to fit their
Yeah.
worldview and things like it's
Mhm.
not that's not bad. The Bible's written to so that you can do that, right? Like it's written in this kind of vague way that's supposed to feel timeless and that it's
Mm,
massively applicable, right? Um,
mm,
and so what's really interesting when that happens is that when we do that, like when I do that, I look at Paul saying in Romans, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And I go, oh, well, that's just neuroplasticity. That's just how none of us are able to do any sort of like self-reflection without understanding the trauma that we've experienced. So we
no,
can't be
bro.
transformed. We can't be transformed until we renew our minds first, right? Like this is like very obvious to me. Or when Paul says, well, Paul didn't write Ephesians, but when the guy who wrote Ephesians under the name Paul says, don't provoke your children to anger. Like, well, that's just everything I talk about in punishment-free parenting, which is, yeah, the way in which we're supposed to discipline cannot be a way in which it flips the brain into a reactive fight or flight mode because it's not teaching. So Paul is just saying it's ineffective to teach children when you provoke them to anger. But most people can't read it in those terms. They just want to read, later in Ephesians where it says slaves obey your masters, and they say, "Oh, I'll just throw this whole thing out," instead of saying, "Well, there, that was wrong. We shouldn't. Nobody should have said slaves obey your masters." Also, contextually, the guy who wrote this thought that the world was going to end in 5 to 10 years. And he didn't think that there was time to I mean, think about how long it took to abolish slavery. He didn't think that there was time to abolish slavery. And so he says, slaves obey your masters and masters treat your slaves as Christ treats the church. So he's trying to undermine the system of slavery without actually abolishing it because he doesn't think he has time to do this. Now, all of a sudden, all of our issues with sexuality and gender and like all these cultural issues, Paul seems to uphold the Roman standard over and over and over in his books, and you're like, well, why would he do that? And it's like, oh, because he thought the world was going to end, because there was no time to have nuanced takes about gender and sexuality. Like that's not the context that he finds himself in. And so like a lot of this stuff is like it's right there. The neuroscience is right there for the picking. But like if you have the eyes to see it, but also um, you have to be willing to ask questions, because if you're the type of person who isn't going to ask questions, then you're just blindly accepting. And to
Yeah, you're
me,
you're so yeah, you're just a to me you're just like you're living a template, a templated life that you're not allowing yourself to like be fully human. Like
that's right.
as I'm listening to you speak, like I'm listening to you speak and I'm thinking about like how you would realize what Paul said or what John said and how that's neuroplasticity.
Yeah.
I don't know that I would never use that term because I'm not like a neuroscience guy, but I know I'm like, well, he's like he's understanding like his brain's working this type of way and he has to like change it or not change it. Like that's how I think. So when
Right.
I think about like the Bible being old, like old literature that's been
Yeah.
changed over time, people have taken it and they've made denominations. I'm like, hey, people take this thing and do what they want with it.
That's right.
Like fair, like I
That's
get
right.
that.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, it comes back to you being able to ask questions and be okay with asking hard questions and just seeing like what happens when you ask, because then the faith really becomes yours. That's what happened my entire life. That's why my
Hmm.
faith is strong for me, because I've asked those hard questions since I was a young kid. And now when I ask the hard question, I know that that's also what I'm supposed to be doing. I can't be guilt tripped by the people who are afraid to ask the questions.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, and
Um,
yeah, I,
is
I think I think it's profound. I mean, a lot of this relates back to like the work that I do in parenting, because a lot of it is the same kind of like, well, we just accept that the way in which we were raised is just the right
mm,
way, instead of asking the question of like, well, why were we raised the way that we were raised? Like, why did my mom put me in timeout in a dark room and close the door and just say, handle your emotions? Like, to her, that was her stepping away from the fact that she had been beat, right? and
mhm,
and she went, I
mhm,
don't want to do that in that same way. And so here's my outlet. Now I can look at that and I can criticize that. And I can say, hey, we need to work with our kids when they're having these big emotions. We can teach them how to work with those emotions so that they don't overwhelm them or they don't repress them. But ultimately, it is not a criticism that she did that. That is progress. And I think that that's the challenge for most of us is actually understanding that we live in a world where it's not where we are today is going to be critiqued by the next group. And that's
Right.
okay.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to ask the
Mm-hmm.
next series of hard questions. And I think that that's like, to me, when I write almost nothing about religion in the book, but when I
Mm-hmm.
in the first introduction piece, I say the reason why I'm uniquely gifted or experienced to write a book like this is because this book is about touching on deeply held beliefs that you are afraid to deconstruct.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's all I do.
Mm-hmm.
I take
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah,
to
and
deeply
that's why
held
I
places.
love your. That's why I love your. Yeah, that's why I love your work, man. Because like I think, like I can just tell the way that you think. I think the same way. Like I'm like I think exactly like John, and like
I love that.
that's like one video that a video that seems to always like hits people's nerves is the one where you talk about why am I blanking out on the term net
Net happiness.
I'm blank. Net happiness, yeah.
Yeah.
So with net happiness, and like so I grew up in LA, like I told you, and like growing up, always had what I needed. I never really had what
Hmm.
I wanted,
Sure.
and I was kind of raised that way.
Hmm.
And being raised that way, as I got older, I'm like, okay, I don't really need a lot of stuff, and therefore I don't even like a lot of stuff because when there's a lot of stuff around, it just seems to like make me
It's
kind of like
chaotic. It's
uneasy.
overwhelming.
Yeah, it makes me really uneasy. And when I saw your video, I'm like, oh, I see that as I can feel that as an adult. But before we get into all that, I want
Yeah.
John to kind of explain, like, in simple terms, what is net happiness, and why do you believe the more you give, the less happier our kids are?
Yeah. So that video is one that kind of went viral recently, and I was just talking about the holidays, and I was talking about how a lot of us are part of this system where we feel like our job as parents is to buy our children stuff around the holidays. And actually I think we can extend this out and say our job as parents is to provide for our kids, and when it's not the holidays, it's, you know, travel baseball, and it's
Mm-hmm.
extra ACT coaching, and it's this, and it's that, and it's the other, and it's all of these different like things that we want to buy to make our kids feel fulfilled. And the concept of net happiness is very simply, are the things that we're giving our kids making their life better, not in the moment that they receive them, but over the lifespan of that experience. And so if I get a great example recently happened with my kids. My kids got into Pokemon cards, which is like this really big deal, you know,
Mm-hmm.
in the culture right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they see other people on YouTube doing the Pokemon openings and getting the, you know, big cards, and of course they only post the videos where the big cards come out. And 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 uh and uh, I said I don't want to get you guys any more Pokemon cards. We can go to the store if you like a specific character or something. You know, you can get that card at your local card store. They have just binders and binders and binders of $1 cards.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I'll get you $1 card of a character you really like. That, no problem with that whatsoever. But if you start going down this path of wanting to open the next pack and open the next pack and open the next pack, first of all, it's just gambling, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
not a healthy thing for underdeveloped brains or actually developed brains to do, right? Like we knew we are very quickly approaching what is going to be a mental health epidemic in men of sports
Mm-hmm.
gambling, right? Like we
Yeah.
are very
Yeah.
close to like a very, very bad thing. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, I don't want to start that. But also, I said, look, the more Pokemon cards I get you, the more Pokemon cards you want. And so the second that you're opening that pack, you might get that dopamine hit. You might feel good about it. You might be excited about it. But immediately after it's over, you want the next one. And now you're going to spend however long it is until I get you the next one unhappy with the thing I just got you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a money thing for me. That's a net happiness thing for me. It's
Mm-hmm.
the more, and by the way, if I got you 100 packs instead of one pack, you wouldn't get bored of it. They are designed so that you'll keep opening them. And if I got you 100, you'd want 1,000. If I got you 1,000, you'd want 10,000. And why are the richest people in the world doubling their wealth every year?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is no amount. At some point, there is no amount that you can have that actually increases your net happiness. It just makes you want for more.
Mm-hmm.
And so take that principle and apply it to Christmas morning, or apply it to whatever your holiday celebration, or apply it to a birthday. And you notice that if you get a kid 10 gifts and they rip them all open, they're frenzied and they like this one, they like that one, whatever. Every subsequent gift they open more quickly, and every subsequent toy they play with less.
Mm-hmm.
If you get them 3 video games, first of all, like, let's be sparing with the amount of, like, screens that
Yeah.
they're consuming. But if you get them 3 video games, they're going to play each of them a third as much as they would play one that you got them that was
Mm-hmm.
really valuable. And so that was just this idea of net happiness is just actually in the lifespan of a consumer driven economy, how much time are our kids spending actually enjoying themselves with the things that we're getting them?
Mm-hmm.
And do they leave that experience feeling empty, or do they leave that experience feeling full? And parents are out here working 2, 3, 4 jobs so that they can keep up with the Joneses, because some kid in my kid's class got 10 packs of Pokemon cards, and now I got to come up with 10 packs of Pokemon cards so that it's fair.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole drive for us actually makes our kids deeply unhappy.
What?
Whereas just playing with them would make them way more happy than all that stuff.
So I actually have a thought on that. So I told you like kind of how I grew up and like I had what I needed, but everybody around me, I had my dad in my life. Most people in my life didn't have their dads, and
Hmm.
I always had what I needed, had what I wanted. Sometimes, most of the time, it wasn't what you want; it's about what you need. And when I'm hearing you speak about like parents working 2 to 3 jobs to like give their kids these things, that they think will make their kids happy. And I remember being on Christmas morning and like getting a bunch of like presents and being super happy about it, but like I didn't use them the way that I thought I would. It was just like it's like when you like gambling. It's like you play blackjack and then you lose the hand. You're like I'm gonna you always say yourself, I'm gonna win the next one. You never say you're
I'm
gonna
going to
beat
win
the
the
next
next
one,
one.
right? Yeah.
Right.
So when you think about this, where do you think parents are coming from when they're doing this? Is it because they are trying to make up for something that they didn't have? Are they stuck in like the keeping up with the Joneses? Is it all different, or is the core of it the same?
I think that we've been sold a lie about happiness. I think, like, this is something that I think eventually there's a book in here somewhere, but we've been sold a lie about happiness, which is that we can have more happiness than our brain allows us to have. The truth is, the amount of happiness that we have is entirely dependent on how much happiness our brain gives us for a given thing, right? And
Oh
so
wow, you gotta okay break that down for me.
so
I'm
so
fascinated by
so
this.
so you a person with $100 million, right? Just think about one of the NFL players or whatever, right? That, yeah, $100 million. They are not more happy than a caveman who just took down a deer. Like, their brain does not experience more dopamine
Mm-hmm.
than a caveman who just took down a deer. And in fact, the more they have, the less dopamine and the less serotonin their brain gives them for each subsequent thing. So every million after 100 million, you get less happy. This is why we know that peak happiness for the average American family back, I want to say 20 years ago, was like $140,000 or something like that. It probably is much more now because of inflation.
Mm-hmm.
But there's an amount of money that you can have where every dollar over that, it's just the law of diminishing marginal returns in economics. Every dollar that you have in addition to that does not actually make you more happy. And at some point, it starts to go negative, where, the people who have the biggest houses and the biggest mortgages, right, are desperate to keep their job and to get the next promotion so that they can just afford the life that they already have. And so I think that what we've been sold this lie that someday we will be happy when we just have accumulated enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then when we look at our kids, and when we've internalized that lie, we look at our kids and we go, well, more for them looks like presents on Christmas. More for them looks like, the newest video game console. More for them looks like making sure that they have the best travel team and the best, equipment on that travel team. And by the way, we're talking about Christmas. I don't care if you spend $100 on your kids for Christmas or $20 on your kids for Christmas, or even, $200 or $300 on your kids for Christmas. What I'm talking about is people who go to the extremes, and we're talking, you know, 15, 20, $30,000 on travel sports, which is the thing that I come in contact with parents that's the case. And they think, well, if they have this, then they'll be happy and successful and they'll feel rewarded. And if they don't, they won't. And as soon as you get into that mindset, you lose the scope of, like, your brain is going to be happy with what you have if you allow it to be.
Yeah.
But if you are constantly pushing for the next thing and constantly discontented, and if you're not looking at the relationships in your life as life-giving, if you're not doing all of these things, you are not going to be happy. And that's the struggle, I think, for many of us with our kids, is that we just think that we can buy it, and we don't say it outright, but because we're trying to buy our own happiness and we view our kids as extensions of ourselves, the natural instinct is to just buy it for them. And by the way, as you watch the NFL game or whatever, and you're being bombarded with marketing, which, by the way, is highly targeted to break your brain. Yeah, right? When you're scrolling social media, those ads are designed to break your brain. They're designed to hack your brain and get you to think things that your brain would not normally think, so that they can extract attention and wealth from you. And as that's happening, you are just getting more and more depressed. And I don't think it's surprising that we live in a society where there is more wealth being generated than at any point in human history. And yet people are more depressed and anxious than they've ever been.
And damn, bro, I have like a million questions. Okay, let me just start with this. So I'm thinking about a parent-child relationship. And I'm thinking about, okay, at some point, kids ask for things that they think that they need that they really don't need.
Yes.
I am a master at that. I'm like, you don't need that. Like, you got about 2 or 3 things that does the exact same thing. I'm very I'm very easy when it comes to stuff. I can see, I like the science of the brain and how things work. I pay attention to, like, the things that they do, what they gravitate. Like, that's my favorite part of parenting. As far as stuff, I can give two. I don't care about that. But then I look at somebody like my wife, who likes to buy things, because I don't know if she thinks it'll make them happy, or if it makes her happy that she's doing it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, what is it? So break that down from like my wife's perspective. Like, the science behind that is, like, do you think it's making the kids happy, or is it making you happy that you're doing it for the kids?
We have to start from the place of what's valuable.
Okay.
So when we live in a society where stuff is supremely valuable, right? And this is something that I haven't ever talked about on a podcast, so I love that we're doing this. When we live in a society where stuff is of the highest value, then the people who want to give the most to those who they love will do so using stuff. Mm-hmm. If we lived in a society where the highest value was our presence instead of the things that we give, our relationships, the ability to tell stories, the ability to sit around and eat popcorn and laugh, or whatever, the people who wanted to give the most would emphasize those things. And so when you look at other indigenous societies that are not wrapped up in the capitalist myth that we've adopted, when you look at those, what you find, and by the way, every ancient tradition, if we get back to religion, every single ancient tradition essentially says the same thing about possessions. Which is an interesting reality, because most traditions, whether they're polytheistic or monotheistic or non-theist, like Buddhism is kind of non-theist, like, no matter what the ancient tradition, all of them seem to have the same perspective on worldly things, which is probably best stated in Buddhism, which is that the desire for more stuff is what causes you unhappiness. And Christianity does this with Jesus saying, if you store up treasures in heaven, the rabbis of the Second Temple period and prior, of the rabbis that wrote the Tanakh, they're saying basically the same thing. Islam is saying essentially the same thing. This is why Muslims tend to be more generous and in speaking than basically any other religion of people. Like all of them have the same thing, which is if you do not hold your stuff loosely, your stuff holds you. Like it holds your heart.
Damn.
And so we live in a society that's basically pushed all of those ancient traditions to the side. And
Why?
we've said no, because it drives wealth to the top, basically. I mean, this is me getting into putting my business hat on. I also have an undergrad degree in business. And so this is my like putting my undergrad hat on and saying, well, capitalism, the argument for capitalism is it's the best worst system that we've come up with yet. And so it helps the most people is the argument, right? It helps the most people comparative to the other systems, but it's all built on this fundamental concept that views human nature as inherently greedy. We just want to accumulate more and more and more. And that is true to a certain extent, but at some point, as we've said, it doesn't make us feel better. So if you look at other indigenous societies that aren't wrapped up in these capitalist myths, that may not even be a part of those other religions that I've just named, like the 5 major world religions. If you look at the indigenous communities, they view items like totally completely different than we do. So to possess something is just to be a temporary steward of it. And this is why you have all of these derogatory things about, being an Indian giver or something where you give something and then you take it back. Because ultimately in that culture, like stuff is just not that important. You give it, you take it, it doesn't matter. The value is in the relationship, not in the thing that's being passed back and forth. But in our society and in our mythology around what makes people happy, the actual value is in the thing, whether that's whatever, gold. And we've done unspeakable atrocities to accumulate more wealth. So we have marginalized people, we have oppressed people, obviously slavery.
That's what I wanted to touch on, because one thing that's coming to my mind is like, I think about like when you grow up not having your basic needs met.
Yes.
And your basic needs are something you're fighting for. But everything around you, TV commercials, the sitcoms that you like watching, the books that you read, the music that you listen to, all the things that you consume are all around stuff and getting more, because that more makes you blank, blank, and blank, which you can say famous, rich, whatever, but it all goes back. Everybody's pointing to happiness, right?
Right.
So now I'm like, for somebody who struggled having their basic needs met, and now that they have kids, and they know that if I'm doing the right thing if I give my kids these things that other people say that they should have, because that's the thing that they should have to make them happy, and that makes me also look like a good parent.
Right.
What do you do? Like, how do you get out of that way of thinking?
Yeah.
What I'm saying?
I think this is like a much longer conversation. One of the things that I talked about on a recent episode of my podcast, when I was talking about it was just cognitive dissonance, this idea that you can hold 2 competing truths in your mind at the same time. We will try and resolve the dissonance when we feel that the dissonance is we're not it's not valuable enough to hold the dissonance. So we'll lie to ourselves. We'd rather resolve the dissonance when the stakes are low, because it's not worth it to hold that pain in our minds of just like these 2 things are true at the same time. And so one of the examples that I gave in a recent podcast episode I did about this is these people who were paid $1, and I promise this is going somewhere. They're paid $1 and $20 to lie about a product. They give a good review of this product. And the people who were paid $1 to give the good review actually found things they liked about the product, even though it was an objectively bad product, because the cognitive dissonance to lie to your friends and family for only $1 was so great that they were like, I would be a bad person if I was lying for $1. Now, the people who were given $20 to lie had no problem lying for $20. And the thing that struck me in this like cost of living crisis that we all find ourselves in, the thing that struck me was I was like, but it was only $20. You're willing to lie to your friends and family for $20? So then I ran the numbers. And I went, well, hang on a second. When was this study done? It was done in like 1953. And I was like, okay, well, that's a lot more money in today's dollars. $20 is a lot more money in today's dollars. But more importantly, what did $20 buy you
Yeah.
in 1953 or 1954? And the answer was 1 month of mortgage payment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you think about it in terms of like the people who don't have their basic needs met, the luxury items that we all enjoy in the Western world, like big screen TVs. Our TV just broke, so I'm thinking about that one. But like a big screen TV or like whatever, a computer. My computer also just broke yesterday.
Jeez.
It's been a rough run for me the last week here. I never spend money on anything, and then I just had these two things dropped in my lap. Um, when we want to spend money on luxury items, they're actually relative to how much we make, much lower than they've ever been in human history. It used to be that a big screen TV gave you status symbol because a big screen TV cost 4, 5, 6 times as much as your mortgage.
Yeah.
Today, a big screen TV doesn't matter how big it is, it's not going to be as much as your mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of the myth and the lie is that we are still operating in a 1950s perspective of like, well, if I have new Jordans, but I'm 6 months behind on my rent, people see me as rich, even though I am struggling. Or if I have a new MacBook, but my business is bankrupt, like people see me as rich, even though the luxury items are actually not even status symbol. Remember when like in 2009, if you had an iPhone, like you were like a CEO.
Yeah.
Today, if you don't have an iPhone, it's an intentional choice to not have one.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this is part of the struggle, is that like we are trying to like keep up with the Joneses, but actually like the cost of milk and eggs is so high that like now we're kind of like, okay, I'm going to leave my kids with massive amounts of debt, but I can buy them toys on Christmas. And like with the credit card industry being what it is, and we can just like accumulate wealth, it just comes down to like a value system, right? And understanding fundamentally the neuroscience behind this stuff, which is like we are just trying to do like it's a hierarchy of needs. We're trying to do this thing in this social world that we live in. And in order to fit into that social world, which we have to, because we're all inherently kind of tribal people who are trying to belong somewhere, right? And like as long as we're trying to fit in, we're going to have to align ourselves to some extent with the values of the people that we're a part of.
Mm-hmm.
My contention is we can go to a deeper value. We can say your value ultimately is that you want your kids to be happy. Here's a better way to do that. Instead of saying, like, for example, or anything from my book, right? If we remove it from happiness, right? Your value is that you want your kid to be self-disciplined. And I have to walk people through it this way. Like I said, I have to take people from, I'll say like to a parent of a teen who's like saying like, they're not getting their grades up. And I say, okay, I understand that you want their grades to be up. Why? Well, if they don't get their grades up, then they're not going to get into a good college. Okay. Why do you care? Well, if they don't get into a good college, they're not going to have a good job. Okay. Why do you care? I literally do this. Like exactly. Well, if they don't have a good job, then they're not going to be able to afford the lifestyle that they want.
What kind of lifestyle do they want?
What kind of lifestyle do they want?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I said, so if they want to go move to the Philippines or Tanzania or something and some super low cost of living place and just like with their kids and homeschool their kids and live in a place that they bought for $5,000 or $10,000.
Are you okay with that?
Are you cool with that? And they're like, yeah. I'm so I go, so what's your actual goal? What's your actual goal for them at 35?
Yeah.
Right. Instead of what's your goal for them at 15 or 5, right? I deal with a lot of people who have 5-year-olds. Like, I just want my 5-year-old not to hit. I'm like, I get it. Like, not what's your goal for them at 5, not what's your goal at 15, not what's your goal at 25. What's your goal at 35, 45, 55? By the way, that's 2/3 of their life after 35, most likely, or at least another half of their life after 35. So what's your goal at 35? And what they're going to tell you over and over is, well, I want them to have good relationships. I want them to be self-disciplined. I want them to have enough. And I want them to be generally happy and successful in however they describe that. And then I go, okay, so now at 4 years old? What if instead of prioritizing the path that you have been sold gets them to that, you just start with the end in mind? You know this as a professional athlete.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There are lots of people who tell you how to become a better safety.
Mm-hmm.
But if you actually start by going, no, I need to know how to read coverages, and the best way to read coverages is to learn how to read coverages,
Mm-hmm.
not to learn how to do this and this and this and this and this and this and this, and it's a roundabout way to learn the thing that I need to learn in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is the thing that we fundamentally miss with our kids. We fundamentally miss that we don't start with the end of like, what life do I want them to have for half their life? Not how are they going to get there? Because here's the truth. You have no idea. ChatGPT came out 5 years ago. It's already redefining everything that we thought.
Yeah, no.
Right? So like
Yeah.
think about all the people who had 10-year-olds 5 years ago, and they thought to themselves, well, my kid's going to need to know how to code. My kid's going to need to know how to write good emails. My kid's going to need to know how to do this and this and this. And for the last 5 years, they've been investing themselves in those skills. And now that's irrelevant. My kid's going to need to know how to do complex physics and math problems. Irrelevant. We know we're the last generation that's going to know how to do those. Like,
Bro, you're speaking to my soul right now, bro. Like everything that you're saying is exactly how, like, I didn't even plan to parent this way. I just do. Because to me, when I think about what I want for my kids, I want them to be good human beings. I want them to be respectful. I want them to be disciplined, and I want them to work hard. I want them to have structure and routine. Because if you have those fundamental things, you could do whatever the
yep.
F you want to do.
Yep.
Whatever you want. So my kids, I say my biggest flex in my parenting, because I'm always like, my kids have better routines than like adults. Because I'm
Great.
like, hey, this is why we have a routine. When you have a routine, it does this. And now they see when they do their routine every morning, they have like 20 extra minutes to do whatever they want. I'm like, yeah, that's why having a routine is good. When my kids do something wrong, I say, hey, there's a difference between like me being upset with you, you getting the consequence from it, and then discipline. I'm teaching them these things about this is how like the world works. I don't give a damn if you want that thing. And it's like, what do you need that for? You
Right.
don't really have an answer for me. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So the thing that you're talking about, the things that we value, is I'm never like, I want my kids, and I mean, to be honest with you, thank God, and I mean this seriously, thank God I had all girls. If I had boys, I think it'd be different. Like, I think it'd be, my neuroplasticity wouldn't be working how it should.
Triggers differently.
Boys.
Yep.
Yeah, facts. So when I think about my kids, I'm like, what do I want at the end of their life? I'm like, I don't know what the hell my kids are gonna want to do. I want them to be good people, though.
Right.
I want them to be respectful. I want them to have control of their life.
Right.
Structure, discipline, routine, not quitting, whatever. Now, there's nuances in there that are really difficult for me not to push them too hard, or to like this morning, my daughter, my middle child, part of they have a reminders like every morning you do this. This is why I did it, and they do a good job with it, but sometimes they forget stuff.
Sure, of course.
So it's cold in Minnesota right now, and a part of their routine in the morning is to put on chapstick.
Sure.
I can tell that my middle child didn't put on chapstick. And I'm like, hey, did you put on chapstick? She goes, yes. I'm like, you did? She goes, no. And she like makes his face. I'm like, why did you lie? So now I'm like, go check your thing and put on chapstick. So now I'm processing while I'm downstairs cooking breakfast. I'm like, okay, I can like give her a consequence. I'm like, no, I think this is an opportunity. But hey, I want to focus on like the fact that she lied really quickly. And I'm like, hey, just don't lie to me. Like, if you need time to think about it, take your time to think, but don't just say something really quick, because now you're lying to me. I don't want you to lie to me. So I took that approach instead of like yelling at her or like having her do something. Like, it's like, what am I? That's not the time for this 6-year-old right now. That is the stuff that I want to give my kids. Because look, ultimately, John, I put this on everything I love. Right hand of God. I was like, I'm raising kids, so when they leave, I'm like, okay, I did my thing. Have a good life. You know what I'm saying? Because the thing is, we can't earn more love from our kids. We can build trust, right? We can build dependability.
Yep.
But love, I cannot make myself love my kids more than I already do, and I can't do that for my kids.
Right.
I want them to be able to be sustainable, strong, dependable, respectful human beings. I don't really give a damn about what they're wearing and whatever. You know what I'm saying?
So
that's why everything you're saying is speaking to me, bro. Because like I parent just like that. I'm like, I don't. What are we talking about?
so
With
so
that or
here's how we're gonna elevate your parenting to the next level.
oh,
Ready?
let's do it, bro.
I know that you want to go to the next level, right?
Yeah.
So you're already doing what I call values-based rather than rules-based parenting, which is something that I don't write about in my book, but that's probably the thing that I talk about most right now.
Okay.
And values-based parenting is saying not what are your rules for your house, but rather what are your values, and then the rules will be born out of your values,
100%.
which means that the rules can change. If
Yeah.
if time goes on and if a new, it might not be appropriate for your kid to cuss when they're 5, but when they're 15, maybe that's appropriate as long as it's not
Yes.
directed at somebody, right?
John, bro, I can talk to
So
you. Bro,
so
I can talk to you all day,
right.
dog.
So you're already doing
sorry, sorry.
values-based parenting rather than rules-based parenting, which is really, really important. The next step below this is to go, you're already thinking in terms of the values. Like I want my kid to be a good person. Good people don't lie. I don't want my kid to lie to me. Right? Like you're like lining it up. The next step in that journey is going, now, how do I get her to see that lying doesn't serve her? And by the way, just so you're aware from the neuroscience perspective, like the easy answer here is kids who lack executive functioning, which is all kids. All kids lack executive functioning, especially kids with ADHD. I'm not diagnosing your daughter, obviously, but especially kids with ADHD, but all kids lack executive functioning. They will do what psychologists call these like trigger response. Like I forget what the exact word that my friend Josh uses for this. It was in my podcast episode on ADHD, where basically they will respond with what they wish was true. And it's not a lie because they'll correct it. They won't hold to it. Like the difference between a lie and these like trigger, like, yeah, I did it, are when you press them, they don't double down. A liar will say, no, I did. No, you just can't see it. And they'll hold it. When you go, wait, pause, think slower. Did you?
Yeah.
And they go, no, I didn't. Okay, go do it. That's actually not even lying, right? But in your case, right, we still have an opportunity to talk about lying because it was still, for lack of a better term, it was lying.
Yeah, I know
right?
what you mean.
Right?
Yeah.
So we saw this. So instead, we're going to frame it around like, I don't want you to lie to me because I won't trust you. That is what we call direct instruction teaching. You're explaining why lying is bad.
Yeah.
What we know is direct instruction is effective, but it's not the most effective. The most effective is you not lying to begin with.
Yeah.
Observational teaching. She watches you, you don't lie. Even when it serves you, you still don't lie. Okay, now I'm learning I'm not supposed to lie, even if it's going to serve me. Second is what we call self-directed, not direct instruction, but self-directed teaching. So instead of saying, which I think you mentioned that you kind of did, instead of saying, I don't want you to lie because it makes me not trust you. This is about your routine. I just care about you, which is all true. And I'm glad that you say those types of things to your daughter. Instead, you say, what were you worried about? Why did you feel like saying that you did it would be better than saying that you didn't? What were you worried about from me? Did you think I was going to be mad at you? What was going on? And now she has to go back into her brain and go, why did I lie? And that means the next time she has that same experience of having that urge or impulse to tell a falsehood, now it's being connected neurologically to the learning that she herself has developed. So now this is the exact same way your coach could have told you 100 times. If you spy on the quarterback X, Y, and Z way, and he pumps over here, you're going to get beat over your head.
Bro, it's reps.
You could have get beat over your head. And yet, said you got beat. Because until you get beat, you don't learn.
Yeah.
So the real thing would be your coach pulling you off to the sideline and going, what happened? And now you go, well, I was doing this, and I was doing this, and I was doing this, and this. And your coach just goes, yep, don't let it happen again. All of a sudden, you know exactly what's going on. Instead of him saying like, hey, you need to do this and this and this and this and this. And now you got to remember what he just said, and you don't even know how to apply it. All of parenting is that. All of parenting is just going, every time a kid does something that's problematic, we just go, Tell me more about that. What's going on? And that when they come to those conclusions, and then here's the next level. Okay, what's your daughter's name?
Luca.
Okay, Luca. Next time that happens, what do you want me to do? Next time you lie to me, what do you think I should do? She go, you should call me out on it. You should do this, do that, do that. Okay. Next time that happens, I'll do it.
What if she says I don't know?
You say, think about it. We'll talk about it later. Now you have a child who is developing self-consequence, which is a form of self-discipline. So now you no longer have to be the police. She has just given you those structures and metrics. And by the way, now she's going to call you from college or whatever, and she's going to say, hey, call me in a week and make sure that I filed my taxes. And if I didn't file my taxes, you let me hear it. That's an accountability structure that she has just set up for herself.
Bro, I want to tell you something.
We're playing chess, not checkers.
You are 100% right. And I'm going to tell you something. My entire life, my entire parenting life, anytime somebody try to talk about not being like firm with the kids, like me, I always say, you got to meet the energy with the energy. Like she lied. I want to let her know. I'm trying to like get the trigger. I'm going to, if we can wrap up here soon too, bro. I know you probably got to go.
Yeah, I got to go pick up my kids.
Okay, so this is the last thing we can wrap up. We got to talk again, bro, because like I can talk to you all day.
Anytime.
Let's end on this. I'm like, okay, she lied. I'm gonna let her know like this is bad, right? Growing up how I grew up, you meet it with intensity because like I was dodging gangs and drugs and players.
The stakes were high.
Right?
The stakes were high.
So, but I realized my kids don't live in that environment, so I have to come down. So I'm doing a lot of the things that you're saying, but now like this morning, I'm like, oh damn. I was like, damn. I wish my tone was a little different.
Mm-hmm.
I wish my tone was, because it would have helped. Because now I'm a larger male. I'm a black male. I kind of have like this like hood street kind of like tone or whatever you want to call it. My kids don't need that from me, but I know that I'm getting better. Like I'm getting better at this. You know what I'm saying? So for parents who feel that like I'm working with what I got, because the thing that I do is like every week I'm like, how do you think dad's doing? And we sit there and we talk about like how I'm doing, and they'll give me like kind of like feedback. Yeah. But I realize they can only tell me so much because their brains aren't developed enough to tell me like, well, you did this, and then it made me feel this way. So
I'm gonna hit you with it.
I'm
gonna hit you with it. I'm gonna tell you exactly what it is. It's the last chapter I wrote in my book. It's actually not the last chapter in the book, but it's the last chapter I wrote. It's called Repair and Reconcile, right? Yes or no, the ability to take accountability and apologize when you are wrong is valuable as a life skill and is the sign of a person who is a good person, yes or no?
Yes.
So we've already said the number one way to learn. Number two way to learn is to learn from your mistakes. We just talked about that. I don't want to say the worst way to learn, but the third best way to learn is to tell her, hey, this is how it is and this is how the world works. The best way to learn, that's third. The best way is what we call observational learning, which is our kids see us do the thing we wish for them to do. So now you have an opportunity to go, hey, this morning when you didn't put on chapstick, my tone was a little much. It doesn't need to be that. I'm sorry my tone was that. I just really care about you being honest, and I got triggered. But I'm going to do better next time. Now she has just learned that when she makes a mistake, the thing to do is to go to the person and say, hey, you know what? It's no big deal. This isn't like some big apology. It's just like, yeah, you know what? There's a little bit of a relationship rupture. And you know what she'll probably say? She'll probably say, Dad, I needed to do that. And you need to tell me to do that. And so you're right. I do need to tell you to do that. I need to hold you accountable, but also I don't have to speak to you like that. And now when she goes out in relationships, not only does she learn how to apologize, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Hang on one second. My wife is like, are you going to go pick up these kids? I'm like, yes.
My bad, bro.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here.
So I'm right here. Not only is that right now, we have a bonus. We have a bonus piece for her, because now the other piece of this is her going, and I am not going to tolerate men speaking to me that way. Because when my dad spoke to me that way, when he had the authority to, he said, but you don't deserve to be spoken to that way. So not only does she learn to apologize, she learns her own value.
Okay, bro. I'm going to go pick up your kids, bro. We got to talk again, because I have I could talk about this all day, bro. So thank you for coming on. And I will.
It's fun to be on. It's fun to be on. Yeah, and I know we didn't even get into the fact that the Bears beat your former team last.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next time, bro. All right, take it easy, dog.
Take care.